have the pleasure of inviting a Prime Minister who is very, very connected to our history and understands just how influential our history is. Somebody who appreciates fully that we stand on the shoulders who came before us and who wants to ensure that we build on the legacy for a much bigger, brighter future, the future dreamed of by our foreparents. So at this time, please help me to welcome our Prime Minister, Dr. the Most Honorable Andrew Holness.
Thank you, please be seated. Thank you, Madam Master of Ceremonies, for your skillful handling of the ceremony so far. Allow me to acknowledge Ministers Robert Montague and Robert Morgan, both ministers in the Ministry of Economic Growth and Job Creation, and other members. I keep saying job creation, but it is the Ministry of Infrastructure Development. That's what it is now. Now, allow me to acknowledge other members of the Cabinet who may be here. The Speaker of the House, the Most Honorable Juliet Holness, who is here in her capacity as an adjoining Member of Parliament. Your Member of Parliament, Mr. James Robertson, for St. Thomas Western, and your Member of Parliament, Miss Yvonne Rose Shaw, for St. Thomas Eastern. Our Permanent Secretary, Mrs. Arlene Williams, who has worked very hard on this project. His Worship the Mayor, Louis Chin, Mr. E.G. Hunter, and representatives of the National Works Agency, stakeholders, members of the public and private sector who are here, and of course, our pastor who prayed for us earlier, and our saxophonist who played for us, and the band that played for us as well. I greet you all. I also acknowledge China Harbour and all the other contractors who worked on the road. Today, we gather to join Jamaica's history to Jamaica's future by designing and designating this section of the Southern Coastal Highway as the Paul Bogle Highway. We honor one of the greatest sons of St. Thomas and reaffirm that national development must always be rooted in our history. The name of the Right Excellent Paul Bogle carries profound meaning for the Jamaican people. It speaks of courage in the face of injustice, leadership in the service to the poor, and a willingness to make the ultimate sacrifice for human dignity. Paul Bogle saw the hardship experienced by the people of St. Thomas. He understood their exclusion from political power, their limited access to justice, and the weight of poverty upon their lives. He did not turn away. He organized, he petitioned, he led, and he stood for his people. The events of 1865 forced the colonial authorities to confront conditions they had ignored for far too long. Paul Bogle's leadership brought national attention to the urgent need for reform and help to change the course of history in Jamaica. As Prime Minister, I'm a student of Paul Bogle. I studied as if I had an exam to sit. 1865 is a critical turning point in the history of Jamaica. There is a reason why St. Thomas was called the Forgotten Parish. And the reason was that because this was the place of rebellion, that there was an attempt to divert resources and attention from the parish. That was 161 years ago. That's about 5 generations. It may seem like a long time, but in the grand scheme of our history, it is not. And the scars of that history are still seen and felt today. But our history, we can use our history as a motivating factor for a better future. And that is one of the messages that I want to leave with all who are gathered here today. Our history as a people is one of struggle. Hard struggle. And in many ways, the struggle continues. In a few days, we will mark emancipation, 1834. The end of slavery. But I want you to think, cast your mind back if you can, and imagine what it was like for your forebears. Been given their freedom, but given no land on which to live that they could claim as their own. There was compensation paid to planters who lost free labor, but those who were enslaved were not compensated for the centuries of free labor given. There were promises of schools that would be built, and indeed there were some trusts set up, and some churches were given endowments, and there were some schools set up, but not enough to prepare persons who were enslaved in poverty and illiteracy, to prepare them now to be free men who will work and trade their skills. There was no consideration for the newly freed for their health care. There was no consideration as to how they would access justice. There was no provision made to create an economy at the end of slavery. Indeed, the thinking of the time was that the people who benefited from slavery would continue a plantation economy. Why educate the newly freed men and women? Why give them access to justice? Why give them access to employment? No. You want to keep them poor and keep them illiterate so that they have to come back to the plantation. That was the thinking. And so those who left the plantation and decided, regardless of what the circumstances are, I am going to try and make life for myself in free villages, occupying lands as farmers without any rights to the land. So between emancipation and 1865, I want you to just imagine how difficult the conditions of existence of our forebears would be. That condition would boil when people who were occupying lands and farming and making a living, the planters would say, what? You are able to survive outside of the plantation? No. We're going to find a way to take you off the land. And that is why up to today, land is such a sensitive issue in Jamaica. A point that I well understand. When people went to get justice, having been dispossessed of their land, and you go to the courts, you expect that there would be some understanding of the situation that would yield justice. But the dispensation of justice was in favor of the planters. So you couldn't get any justice from the courts. If you got into a conflict with a planter or a landowner, who is there to adjudicate? And so all of these created a tension that boiled over. And within this tension emerged a deacon, a pastor, a man of God, who was peacefully leading his people, bringing petitions along with George William Gordon, who was also protesting the conditions. Paul Bogle led a march on Morant Bay. It created a confrontation which spilled into what we call the rebellion. Estates were burnt, private houses were burnt, private property destroyed. The buildings, the public buildings in the square were also destroyed. There was a standoff with the local militia and those of our forebears who decided that we will not take this any longer. It was quickly put down within a matter of days. Over 400 Jamaicans were killed. It is oftentimes compared with a massacre. Many were put before a summary military court, summarily tried, and executed, hung. Many were whipped. Gordon was put before a military court. He was not known to have participated in the actual rebellion in the sense of leading a rebellion or the use of any violence. But he was tried in a military court and summarily executed as well. I believe that would have been the 23rd of October. The following day, on the 24th, Paul Bogle was also executed. This part of Jamaican history, it is not so much featured as a critical part of the formation of the Jamaican state. We tend to think of the Jamaican state as beginning more at independence in 1962. But the journey to 1962 actually started in 1865. It is in many ways an unresolved struggle in the minds of the Jamaican people. Because we still see ourselves as being unfairly deprived of something for which we must rebel in order to achieve justice. In the building of a nation, we acknowledge, indeed we embrace, and we place it in the context of how we had to fight to get to where we are. But as we seek to build a nation, the nation also has to be built on how we unite as a people in a common struggle. Not to divide ourselves and fight ourselves and reject order and law, but how we can build an order and a law that is fair and equitable and considerate of all Jamaicans. So as we reflect on our history of struggle, we must see a new vision of the Jamaica that we are creating. A Jamaica that is fair. A Jamaica that is just. A Jamaica that gives opportunity for all Jamaicans. A Jamaica that is forward-looking. A Jamaica that is prospecting. A Jamaica that is pro-growth. A Jamaica that is just, innovative, creative. A Jamaica that is prosperous. That is what we want to do. It is said that the road to development, the prosperity, the justice, the fairness, the road to that is the issue of connectivity. You build roads to connect people. But more than that, you build roads to connect opportunities, to bring resources, to materialize an opportunity. And it will take us quite quickly into Port Antonio. That was the notion. On second thought, we decided that development must not bypass the people. Development must bring the people in. And the people being brought in, they too will contribute to the process of development. And so we decided that, yes, we will make a 4-lane highway from Harborview, starting from Harborview, and then the rest of it, we will focus on improving and making some changes to the existing alignment of this road. That would go through communities that were for so long ignored. That decision, though it was a well-meaning decision, meant that the road work lasted much longer than we had anticipated. Difficult task, as I'm looking now at E.G. Hunter and his team from the NWA to build a road while you're driving on it, to build a road while you live right in front of it. It was a decision that I still stand by today, but I do believe that I should offer an apology to the citizens who suffered a great deal of discomfort during the construction of the road. And I ask you to pardon the progress. So, without question, the road has given a new sense of development to the people of St. Thomas. But one road does not development make. And as fantastic as this road is, when you turn off some of the roads, the people are still saying, I don't see the development past my yard yet. So they won't even say thank you, Prime Minister, for the road. They're not busy with that anymore. When is the road passing my house? I've been in it long enough now to understand that that is how the Jamaican electorate is. But that is just how electorates are all over the world. What have you done for me lately? So as I stand here, I take a very short bow for the road and gloat only for a minute that we were able to do it. But my presentation also has to say what is next. Why? Because the struggle continues. Every Jamaican should appreciate, in me as your Prime Minister, I believe in struggle. I understand struggle. I am not afraid of struggle. We will continue to fight for our development. So I say, whether you are JLP in orientation or PNP in orientation, we all believe in one thing, that our country must develop. And it is not development for some and nothing for others. This road passes all the communities, whether they are JLP or PNP, everybody must benefit from the road. And as we stand here to honor our national hero, it is not the Jamaica Labour Party honoring Paul Bogle. It's not the PNP honoring Paul Bogle. It is the people of Jamaica as one. As one. Because the struggle is common, regardless of what your political opinion is. The struggle is common. We are still struggling to provide water to every household here in St. Thomas. We are still struggling to bring proper roads to every community here. We are still struggling to improve the quality of education for all the children here. We are still struggling with the quality of your health care. We are still struggling. But we never give up the fight. Like Paul Bogle, we keep the fight. We keep the fight. Because, you know, how we as a people organize to manage our development is important. You know what else happened in 1865? In 1865, the American Revolution came to an end, the Civil War. slavery was abolished in the US. I believe that same year, President Abraham Lincoln was assassinated. So you look at the American Civil War, the end of it, and where their economy and their country has moved, and you look at our country with our conflict and our struggle and where we are. We have to say we could have achieved much more than we have, though we have achieved quite a bit. What we must commit to doing now is to be more efficient and more productive as a people. We must make the right decisions about the use of our resources. That's what we must commit to doing. And I always believe that the right decision in the use of resources is to build infrastructure. If it is one thing that you can say about the American society or any society that is developed, coming out of conflict, they invested in infrastructure. Coming out of our conflict in 1865, there were some changes made as to how Jamaica managed its development. Before 1865, Jamaica was a self-governing colony. It had its own parliament, its own legislature. Because of the rebellion, and it did create quite a stir in the colonial power in the United Kingdom, they decided that they would vote to end their own legislative authority. And Jamaica became a crown colony managed directly by the United Kingdom. So we essentially, as a country, though most of the population was a part of the power of the country, decided that our affairs must be administered elsewhere. It was not until 1944 that we reclaimed most of our constitutional self-government. And then finally, in 1962, to become independent. Out of 1865, we changed the way in which we administered the country. We had over 20 plus parishes, my recollection. After that, we redistrict the country into 14 parishes. That's how we have 14 parishes today. And as I speak on that, the country has grown since 161 years ago. And it needs redistricting in how the local government is managed. Out of 1865 came a professional constabulary force, the JCF. The JCF that you have now. As a result of that, the colonial government also decided to spend on infrastructure in the country. And between 1865, well into the 1950s, most of what we call the infrastructure today, that is when it was built. For example, the Flat Bridge, the Hermitage Dam, the canal that runs along the Rio Cobre and watering the plains of St. Catherine, the Spanish Town Hospital, the University Hospital, all of those were built out under the colonial era. If we claim to be an independent people, we must build our own infrastructure. We mustn't be afraid to build our own infrastructure. We must build And that is what this administration has been doing for the past 10 years. Building infrastructure. Infrastructure makes life better. It gives greater convenience. It creates more opportunities. But more than that, it creates, if it is well built, greater resilience, the ability to withstand and recover from shocks. This road that we celebrate here and we name in honor of our national hero will improve the lives of the people of this parish. Everybody who takes the bus to work and gets there 30 minutes earlier experiences a saving of resources, whether it is petrol, time, convenience, increased productivity. Everybody who decides to travel on this road and stop at Roselle or all the other little stops that I'm seeing, all the shops get more custom. But the development is going to be even more, because now St. Thomas is a place where people are making a conscious decision. You know what? The piece of land that I have there, some people might say, you know what, let me sell it so somebody can develop the land, or some might say, I'll keep it and develop the land. But as I stand here, I know of more than 5,000 houses, much more than that are in the pipeline along the roadway. I know of plans to build a new port for St. Thomas. And I tell you, I speak as if it is outside of the actions of the government. The government is planning to build a port in St. Thomas, and it's not just a plan, we are well advanced in doing that. It will be an aggregate port, but it will also be for cruise shipping, because we're going to bring tourism to this corridor in a significant way. We are well advanced with a plan to put a museum, yes, a museum in Morant Bay, to properly document and house the artifacts and to tell the story of Jamaica, so that every child can jump on one of the lovely school buses that we have put in place, make it a prescribed trip for them to come to the Morant Bay Museum to see how the Jamaican struggle started and where we are in that journey. We have plans for other major developments in this area, including the creation of what is called an eco drive. What people speak of mostly when they drive on the road is not how smooth it is and the quality of the road. They are stunned by the beauty they see, the lovely vistas of the road next to the beautiful Caribbean Sea. And as you drive through, you see pictures of an unspoiled Jamaica, peaceful, rural, and rustic. There is great value in that. And so we're going to develop that route with proper streetscaping, trees, proper stops for public sanitation, proper stops for vendors, develop beaches along the way. People can just jump in their car, drive along, pull off the road safely with proper amenities and parking, and enjoy the beauty of their country. Tourists can come and do the same. And so we are going to develop this eco corridor, and it will cross from St. Thomas through Portland. We notice that as we have this lovely road, there are persons who are constructing. They are putting up fences and they are doing all kinds of things. I ask you to consider carefully what you put up alongside the road. Don't make it look chaka-chaka and ugly. Start to think about how you dispose of your garbage, your waste, your refuse. Don't just throw it on the road so it ends up on the verges. Start to take some pride in your community. You might live in a hovel, but it doesn't have to be a dump. Help us with the improvement of this streetscape. So you will hear more about the Eco Drive project. So it can't be said anymore that St. Thomas paid the price for the Morant Bay Rebellion. Today we repay St. Thomas. Today history comes full circle as we name this road in honor of our national hero, Paul Bogle. The road is 31.5 kilometers, starting from the Bull River Bridge to the roundabout where we are at Morant Bay. This is the section that we will name the Paul Bogle Highway. We are now contemplating the remaining section to the border of Portland as to how we should name it. Clearly, George William Gordon would have some claim on that road. But like everything else we do, we consult. We have to talk to the people. So we'll hear, we'll talk and we'll consult and we will hear what's your opinion on naming the road. You know, Minister Montague here whisper under his voice, tacky. I don't know, but RLG Newland. But options are there, and we will consult with you, the people, to help guide us as to how we designate and name the road. Ladies and gentlemen, let me say that the minister without responsibility in the Ministry of Economic Growth and Infrastructure Development has asked me to announce that the Jamaica Road Register, that will go live at 1 p.m. today, and that is jamaicaroadregister.gov.jm, and the roads in Kingston and in St. Catherine will be listed there. So you can go on that website and see the status of your road, which would be your road, when it is scheduled to be repaired, which program it is on. And it will be interactive. You will be able to upload information from your community about the roads. So that gives us feedback so we begin to understand. This is part of a larger mission to take control of our roads and to make our roads a place of pride and dignity that are indeed roads to development. Ladies and gentlemen, it was a great pleasure to address you. I hope that you have received some understanding as to why we are doing this and your part in this long journey of development. God bless you and thank you.